Look, I've been horrified by the violent attacks seen on city streets and the increase in violence used in those attacks. I've heard the community's call, their demand for action, and I'm confident that the package that Cabinet approved yesterday will make the difference and start the change that the community seeks to have implemented. The new measures are tough, and I make no apologies for that. These new measures will, in some quarters, be opposed in total or in part by some. But what's been happening on Sydney CBD streets and in other parts of the state demands strong action, and this government is committed to delivering that strong action. The measures announced today continue our targeted approach since we came to office, that include not just the introduction of 3 strikes regime, but also increasing the numbers of police, increasing their powers, and of course improving public transport. We're getting on with the job of making streets safer. Targeted changes that we've made at King's Cross have seen a reduction in assaults in licensed venues, but more improvements are needed across the entirety of these precincts. Dealing effectively with the issue of drug and alcohol-fueled violence will require, as I said yesterday, concerted effort by all of government and its agencies, by the alcohol industry and by the community. A strong, consistent message is needed when it comes to drug and alcohol-fueled violence. The fact is, it's not acceptable for people to go out, get intoxicated, start a fight, throw a punch, whether it's a coward's punch or another punch, and think they'll get away with it. Under these measures, they will face tough consequences. There's no single cure-all to these problems. If there had been simple or single solutions, they would have been implemented long ago. Part of the solution will involve community education, and that's why this package also commits to a multimedia campaign along the lines of those road safety campaigns like What's Your Plan B that we currently see on our TV screens. But it's important that all of us play our role if we're going to stamp out and seek to reduce the amount of alcohol and drug-induced violence and attacks across our community. Can I just make the point before I move through the individual measures? The Parliament is likely to resume next Wednesday or Thursday to deal with legislation that will seek to introduce the one-punch laws, that will seek to introduce mandatory minimum sentences in relation to assaults that cause death and other serious assaults, that will ensure that there are increased maximum penalties where alcohol and drugs have been involved in assaults, that will remove the mitigating circumstance, or the excuse if you like, when it comes to sentencing that someone was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and that sits alongside existing provisions that take account of age and vulnerability of victims when it comes to these matters, and that will also enable empower police to undertake drug and alcohol testing of offenders who they believe have been engaged in drug and alcohol related assaults. Can I finally make this point before I run through some of the measures? This is not about penalising responsible drinkers. It is about attacking the irresponsible acts of those who allow themselves to be intoxicated, whether by drugs or alcohol. We need a clear message on this, and what we're doing today through this package, a package that will be implemented in some cases immediately, some short-term, some long-term, is sending the clearest possible message that alcohol and drug-fuelled violence, not just in the Sydney CBD, but across this state, are unacceptable, and that there will be serious consequences for those who engage in it. Can I just make the point about some of the measures that are being introduced? I've referred to the fact that there will be an 8-year mandatory minimum sentence for those who offend our one-punch laws when they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. The one-punch law will have a 20-year maximum, but it will be a 25-year maximum with a minimum where drugs and alcohol are involved. Why the difference? Because we're sending a clear message about alcohol and drug-induced violence. Equally, there will be additional maximum penalties increased by 2 years for serious assaults where those people are engaged with drugs and alcohol during those assaults. Mandatory minimums will apply there as well. There will be the introduction of a 1:30 lockout of licensed premises across a new expanded Sydney CBD precinct. There'll be an end to drinks at 3 a.m. This is about trying to send a very clear message to the industry that yes, you can continue to trade after 3 o'clock, but drinks will cease at 3 o'clock. There'll be new statewide closing time of 10 p.m. for bottle shops across New South Wales. But licensed venues alone are not the source of all of the alcohol problems across New South Wales. Bottle shops have to play their role as well, and we think that it's appropriate that all bottle shops across the state should be closed by at least 10 o'clock. There'll be an increase in the penalty for the possession or illegal use of steroids. Currently in New South Wales the maximum penalty is 2 years. In Victoria it is 25 years. It will be increased to the Victorian level. There will be increased on-the-spot fines available to police to deal with disorderly behaviour in some of these areas across New South Wales. So for instance, someone who engages in disobeying a police move-on order and continues to behave in a disorderly and intoxicated manner will be subject to a fine of $1,100, up currently from the $200 fine that exists. There'll be a multi-million-dollar community awareness program that I've referred to. There'll be free buses running every 10 minutes from King's Cross on Friday and Saturday nights to connect with those night rider services that normally start around Town Hall or Central Station.